Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The misconception that we are going to discuss today vis-a-vis Islamic customs and etiquette is the notion that it is understood and generally stated that Muslims cannot be friends with non-Muslims. They cannot have friendship with them. And therefore, on this basis, no relationship of friendship can be established with any non-Muslim. Now, this question has become even more pronounced in societies where Muslims and non-Muslims get to interact with each other. We know that there are societies in which Muslims are living as minorities, and there are societies in which other denominations are living as minorities and interacting with Muslims every day. And if the Quran, as it's said, and of course it's rightly said that the Quran says that friendship is prohibited with non-Muslims, then how can other relationships be established with them when in the very first place the Quran has stopped Muslims from being friends with non-Muslims? Now, we have to understand these verses of the Quran and the context in which they occur. If we analyze these verses and set them in the proper background, we come to realize that all such verses which say, for example, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, la tattakhizul yahuda wan nasara awliya, O believers, do not make these Jews and Christians your friends. And similarly, it is said, La yattakhizul mu'minun al-kafirina awliya min dunil mu'minin, that believers should not make these kafirs as their friends, leaving aside other Muslims or other believers. Then what is the meaning or what is the context of these verses? Now, if we deliberate on the Quran, we come to realize that there is a specific law which is stated in the Quran, and these verses are nothing but corollaries and various expressions of that law, various statements or various consequences of that law. And that law is that people who have intentionally denied the truth in the times of the messengers of God, they are punished in various categories, and before that punishment takes place, they are made distinct from believers. They are sifted out from the believers, and this, in the terminology of the Quran, is called tathir, or separation. And this is a stage which is reached in the times of the messengers of God, in which if the people who have intentionally denied the truth, if they are to be punished, then they must be sifted out. They must be separated from from the believers, so that they become distinct. Muslims get to know, and believers get to know who these people are, and so that they are absolutely ascertained as one lot. Now, this is what actually happened also in the times of the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all these verses specifically relate to his direct addressees, about whom the Quran had told the Prophet that they had intentionally denied the truth and therefore had become such kafirs, which had to be made distinct from these non-Muslims, from these Muslims, and sifted out from them, so that they could be punished later on as one unit. Now, it has to be understood that all these instances, all these verses which mention that friendship should not be made with these non-Muslims or these Jews and Christians, that they are all specifically related to the Jews and Christians of the direct addressees of Prophet Muhammad, because it is only about them that we can ascertain if they have intentionally denied or not. And these verses relate to intentional denial of the truth, because it says that they have become kafirs, they have become disbelievers by doing so. So in a nutshell, we can say that all these verses which say that Muslims should not befriend non-Muslims, they are all related to non-Muslims which were the direct addressees of the Prophet Muhammad, because these were the non-Muslims to whom truth had become evident, and in spite of becoming evident to them, they became arrogant and they did not accept the truth. Now, and of course, this news was given to the Prophet by none other than by the Almighty Himself. So, this news of deliberate denial, this intentional denial, is something, since it relates to the heart, since only the Almighty can divulge it, and once the institution of Wahi was terminated, no one can now know whether a person is intentionally denying the truth or not. So, therefore, we cannot apply these verses to such non-Muslims. And all those non-Muslims after the Prophet had passed away, about which we had no knowledge whether they had intentionally denied the truth or not, we cannot apply these verses to them. These verses specifically pertain to to non-Muslims who have intentionally denied the truth, and thereby have become they deserve the wrath of God as such. So, in a nutshell, we can say that these verses do not relate to non-Muslims of today, because although they might be kafirs, although they might be intentionally denying the truth today, but today we have no means of deciphering whether this is happening with them or not. So, this verse would not apply to the Jews and Christians of today, and today we can become friends with Jews and Christians, of course, and the very verse which stops us, as I said, relates specifically to those categories of non-Muslims who had intentionally denied the truth in the times of the Prophet. And today, since we cannot determine whether a non-Muslim is intentionally denying the truth or not, we cannot apply these verses to such non-Muslims of today. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.